thing we weren't expecting. Right?
I'm sorry, Robin?
We weren't really expecting somebody else to go on the cell tower.
No, so you actually previously approved the bid for Dish.
Okay.
And then since that time, they've been trying to execute a lease. So
Okay.
that's
All right.
I've got that. All right, well, I'm going to begin the preliminary stuff and welcome everyone. 6:30, we're welcoming everyone to the May 23rd Board of Selectmen meeting. I am John Jeffries, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Robin Hunter is
Present.
here. Robin.
Present.
David Haviland.
Present.
We have Chris Costello, our Assistant Town Administrator. Mike Blanchard, our Town Administrator. Mona, who is the woman behind the curtain who's running everything. We're going to get right to our first order of business, which is citizen speak. But before we do that, I just want to remind everyone that the meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Haley's authorization of March 2023. Individuals wishing to participate may do so utilizing the Zoom video conferencing technology. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and that everything on your computer is shared live and on Facebook. It's broadcast by the Dover-Sherburne Cable Television. Accordingly, please take care not to share your screen as others may see it. Please remember to mute your computer or your phone when not speaking, and we will call upon you. Please state your name, and if you are a resident of Dover, where you are from. As I said, the first order of business this evening is citizen speak, and before we get into that, we have to acknowledge that Robin Hunter is returning from her son Sam's wedding. Congratulations, Robin.
Thank you.
How was my man Sam Hunter's wedding?
It was amazing.
Congratulations. I'll bet it was.
It was a fairy tale.
Oh, so cool. That is great. Well, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, please, I'm extending to Sam, to the Hunter family. Robin, what is his wife's name?
Christine.
Christine. Our congratulations to you and Greg. Congratulations. Chris, any citizen speak questions or comments prior that came to you?
I did not receive any prior and not seeing anybody in attendance.
Terrific. Let's move to the first order of business, which is the reorganization of the Board of Selectmen. Actually, this is quite easily done because given the unfortunate situation that we were in last year with the passing of Bob Springett, we had to do this last year. So we are essentially continuing with the roles that we began last year. So Chris or Michael, can we move directly to the nominations, to the motions in the summary?
Yeah, I don't think there's any discussion necessary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Robin or Dave, would you like to? There doesn't seem to be any discussion that we need to go through, but.
All right. So I move to nominate John Jeffries as chair of the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
All in favor?
I, Robin Hunter.
I, Dave Haviland.
Aye, John Jeffries. Dave?
I move to nominate Robin Hunter as clerk of the Board of Selectmen.
Second? All in favor? I, John Jeffries.
I, Dave Haviland.
I, Robin Hunter.
And I move to nominate Dave Haviland as a member of the Board of Selectmen. And ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor, I, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
I, Dave Haviland.
Well, there we go.
So
That's
Dave,
done.
was your first term the shortest term ever in the history of Dover? We should find that out.
This might be.
Mona is our historian, Robin, so she's going to have to go back and research that. Well,
Stellar performance, Dave.
Yeah, right, exactly. I got reelected, so hey.
Right.
Congratulations.
I actually have a quick question on this. Do we need to vote for signing authority, or by what we just did, would that allow me to sign a warrant?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I needed to know.
Yeah, all three of us can. It's we made that an official policy during the COVID. Like that was an early on, because we could do it via email, and versus going in and actually doing it live like we used to, in with a wet signature. So
No, I just wanted to make sure that, because Mona had, when I get those warrants, I'm like, what do I do with this? Do I have to approve it, et cetera? And she explained to me that you had to wait until right now. So thank you, Mona.
terrific. Well, congratulations, everyone. And we're on to our next year. The next item of business is the approval of the lease between Dish Wireless Networks, LLC, for the lease of space on the existing tower and the ground space of the Dover Highway Department. Bill Solomon is here. Bill has represented Dover for several years. He is our attorney that we use for leasing, the lease negotiations for the cell tower with the 4 renters, if that's the correct term, of the cell tower. Cell tower is a great source of revenue for the town, obviously provides a lot more than revenue, provides a service to the town that's indispensable. And Bill has gone through the leases. We began the lease process several months ago, and this was just a matter of Bill formalizing the lease on behalf of the town of Dover. And Bill, is there anything that you would like to add to this? We have been through it. Everybody's had a chance on the board to read it. Is there anything that is unique about this that you would like to bring to our attention?
Sure. No, very little. Thank you, Mr. Jeffries. So again, William Solomon, thank you for having me here today. The only difference with the other leases, as you know, this Dish will be replacing Sprint. The original leases, about 18, 19 years ago, had four carriers: T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint. T-Mobile purchased Sprint, and Sprint chose not to bid when we went out about approximately 2+ years ago. Dish was going to bid. Then after the bids were in and the leases signed, Dish realized, gee, it should have, and so we went out again with a request for bid process. And as you said, Mr. Chairman, that this is the result, is a lease with Dish. It's an initial 10-year lease with a 5-year renewal and another 5-year renewal. And the only difference with the existing leases is that the town has the right on the final 5-year renewal to shorten the license term from somewhat less than 5 years to no earlier than 2044. If the town at that point decides that or August 31st, 2042, if the town at that point decides that or finds itself in a position that Dish would be the only lessee on the tower, and if the town had reason not to want to have Dish there after the other 3 parties, then the town has the right to shorten the lease. Other than that, minor differences with the other lease, but basically the same, because we use the same bid document. And I would say, and following up on what the chair said of the consideration to the town, in addition to the service provided, that with respect to all 4 carriers over 20 years, it amounts to over $5 million.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's significant.
It
So now-
is.
Right.
I'm sorry, Robin is going to be, in 40 years from now, Robin is going to be the only one of the 3 of us that will still be here, and she'll be able to renegotiate that lease with you at that time.
If I
Wait.
have all my marbles back then, it will be a miracle.
At that point, they'll say, well, we let the
Well,
chair
they won't
know
be
that-
cell towers.
Yeah, exactly.
good. And hopefully that, with the chair being reappointed, we're not looking at another, at a 20-year term after that, that democracy will prevail. So
Robin,
thank
do you have
very
any
much.
questions? Or Robin or Dave, do you have questions about the
No.
lease? Or?
I
No.
do have one possible typo. If you
Oh.
go to the third paragraph, C, it says the lease may not be a full 20 years.
Okay, well, let me do this because I have to sign it to be final. I will I will change that. Thank you, Mr. Haviland, for raising that, and I will I will address. I'll correct that.
Of course, it's just a typo.
Yeah, no,
I thought
thank you
I'd
very
point it
much.
out.
Yeah, I know you read these things a million times over, but as you know, so thank you
You
very much.
self-correct. I do it all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I
Thanks,
just
Dave.
auto-correct in my brain, so.
Yeah.
It was actually a test to see if anybody read it. We did that on purpose. So good job, Dave.
I was on page 56 of the first 105 pages, but thank you all. So the motion is I move to approve the lease between the town of Dover and Dish Wireless LLC for the lease of the space on the existing communications tower at 2 Dedham Street with a commencement date of July 1st, 2024, and ask for a second.
I'll
Yep.
second that.
All in favor? I, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
Thank you all very much.
Thank
Bill, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks also the town administrator for working on this together with the Mr. Valente, who was deeply involved as we went along. So I appreciate that. And thank you. Have a good holiday.
Thanks.
You too.
Thank you, you too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. I wasn't kidding about the 50 pages with the amendments and the drawings and all of the detail. Dave, did you read page 58, subsection 4, article 6? I'm kidding. I'm expecting you to answer that. Changes in schedules. And we went right from the cell tower to Aquarian
Right, to water.
to water. Michael, would you like to introduce John and his team?
Yes, we have Adam, John, and Amanda from Aquarian today. I know I gave the board a little bit of a preview, but I think there's some certainly exciting opportunities to explore here, and I'll just turn it over to Aquarium. I don't know who's going to speak first.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in here.
Sure.
Can I share right from here, or do I?
Yeah,
need
so I think I
Adam,
just turned on
Adam,
screen share.
You
Should be
just
good to go.
introduce yourself, or John, will you introduce Adam just for your position at Aquarian and specifically the item? Are you going to speak to the interconnection between the town and the main, or are you going to do the interconnection between Dedham, Westwood, and the town? Which portion of this are you going to do?
Yeah, we've got well, yeah, let me introduce myself. So yeah, no, my name's Adam Simonson. My title, I'm Director of Business Development at Aquarian. I think you guys are familiar with John and his Vice President of Operations, right?
Yes.
Good to see you all again.
Nice to see you too.
And then we also have Amanda Keys, which Amanda is Manager of Capital Delivery in our engineering group for Massachusetts and New Hampshire. So we had a handful of slides to walk through to kind of hit these agenda items. I mean, John's going to start. I've got a couple things to chime in. Amanda's going to chime in as well too, and we can I think hit all these topics. If that work on your end?
Sure, Adam. Which one do you want to do first?
Yeah, let me pop the slides up here, and we can. Give me 1 second here. Sorry, I got 3 different things that popped up here.
I'm chuckling to myself because I always have the same issue.
Yeah, yeah, hang on, I got the wrong.
So you want to go
Uh,
to your other screen or just do presentation mode?
Yeah, let's do,
There you go.
um, yeah, I don't, yeah, does that work for you guys? Can you guys see those slides okay?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
that's set up? Okay, great. Yeah, so let me, John, why don't you, I'll just hit on this first slide, John, and why don't you jump in?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all again. So just to give a summary of since the last time we talked, which I think was about a year ago, we did complete projects that we had described in the past. There were 3 projects that we needed to complete to allow us to use to serve more of the customers with our Knollwood well field. For the majority of the system, it's served by the combination of our Knollwood wells and our Francis Street well field. Francis Street used to be our primary well field. It is no longer because we completed those projects. So you can see from the table there, as an example, before or January to October last year, Francis Street was about 87% of the water supply. And now that has switched. We finished those projects in October. So from November through April, Knollwood was 92% of the supply. Why that really matters is Francis Street has iron and manganese in the well water, and that causes discoloration. The Knollwood Avenue wells does not have iron and manganese. So this has addressed, the switch has addressed the discolored water issues in the system. I will say that as we move into the summer and irrigation systems kick on in the early morning hours, the Francis Street well field will be needed more than it has in the past several months. But the majority of the water, the vast majority of the water supply will continue to come from that better well field at Knollwood Avenue. Any questions from anyone?
The Bacardi Street and the repaving, all of the connectivity, all that's done, John?
Yes, all those projects were finished from like January to October last year. It took us that time frame to complete all those projects.
Yeah, and I noticed we were, it was brought to our attention on many of occasions how the Bacardi Street was dug up, and then the Brenton Road and I can't remember the second side street off of the circle was also impacted, but it seems like it's been completed for a while. It's just a much larger pump and obviously a newer pumping.
The well field project, the Knollwood Wellfield project, involved new pumps in the well, but also we added chlorination there and did some other upgrades that allowed us to increase the capacity significantly of that well field. And at Bacardi Lane, it was a new pump station. We happened to have a building there, so we're lucky to have that building, and we built the pump station inside of it.
Thank you. Adam, are you ready?
Yeah, well, John's going to hit this next
Sure.
topic here. We talk about Springdale here.
Yeah, so I'm sure you recall the Springdale system that has its own water supply. There are 2 wells at the end of Old Colony Road on this map in the upper left. And those wells in the summer of 2022, we detected PFAS over the Massachusetts maximum contaminant level, and thus have been in the process of doing a couple things to address that. And there are 2 solutions that we are working on in parallel. One of them is, I'll go with the second one first here. We are constructing treatment at that well field. It'll be seasonal treatment. So in any warm months, we can use the treatment. And that just involves what are called granular activated carbon filters. And the water runs through those filters and absorbs the PFAS, thus taking it out of the water supply. In parallel with that, we are still hoping to be able to open the Springdale interconnection. You may recall that there's a section of piping here shown as town-owned pipe. It is the black pipe in dashed line. That is a town-owned pipe. At the end of it, at the corner of Old Colony Drive and Springdale Ave, there's a vault that has valving and a flow meter in it. That if we open that up, it will allow us to move water from our Knollwood well field through the town's piping into our Springdale system, thus allowing us to turn off the Springdale wells. And so we are still hoping to be able to do that with that town-owned pipe and pass our water from Knollwood well field through it. I should add, there's a bullet here that said this, so that is a seasonal option, meaning still in the summer, we expect that we would need to run the Springdale wells through its seasonal treatment system because there are such high irrigation demands across the whole system, but including in the Springdale system, that the Knollwood and Francis Street well fields, they would be able to meet the demand, but it would mean us putting more Francis Street water in the system, and we want to avoid that because of the iron and manganese in those wells. So in the summer, we would expect to have to still run the Springdale wells using that seasonal treatment system. However, if we do complete an interconnection with Dedham Westwood Water District, which Adam will be getting to in a minute, we would be able to take the Springdale wells offline permanently.
Hey, John, quick question on the Dover Town Center end of that connection where Spring Lane and Church Street come in to that diagram that you've circled.
Yes.
There was a break in the main that happened this winter. What was the cause of that?
I think that I believe was on the town. That was definitely on the town's piping.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the cause was. I think I saw Kevin McCabe on. He may know.
Yeah, Carl's on as well. Carl, do you want to hop on?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. It was a break on this line that goes down to Spring Lane. From the 50s, we relocated it to the 12-inch main, length of pipe, issue went away.
And so, Carl, what happens going down Springdale? Did that break affect it? Does that break have anything to do with the quality of our ability to deliver, to have water pass through there?
No, not at all. It's this Spring Lane has a 4-inch main. Springdale at that juncture is a 12-inch main. And that 12-inch main was put in 89. And we just tapped into it and eliminated the 1950 plus year old connection from the older system from Church Street north towards the square.
Okay. So,
That's
John,
we just relocated it
what?
because the way
Now,
they did it back in the 50s, it was not appropriate.
John Walsh, now that we, the town, owns the land between that connection and the Knollwood wells, why don't we just make a new water main that goes right directly from Spring Lane right to the Knollwood wells? It seems like it would be a whole lot more efficient to do it that way.
Yeah, I was unaware of this. So the town owns a piece of land.
We own the land at 46 Springdale. Literally the land that connects those two pieces of property, the end of Spring Lane and the Knollwood wells, is almost a straight shot.
Okay. Well, we wouldn't. We don't need any additional main to get the water from Knollwood over to the Springdale system. It's just a matter of opening that Springdale interconnection. So that would be additional costs that no one would need to incur to get the water from the Knollwood wells over to Springdale.
Right. Because the cost of infrastructure is quite high. And that's what you would be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, so we wouldn't need, and we don't need a new main to get over to the Springdale interconnection. We just need the authorization to pass our water through the town-owned mains.
And I think it's probably worth noting, John, too, right, that Mass DP is on board with this as a solution, right? They would like to see that as a permanent solution as well.
Yes.
And we've been instructed by them to give monthly updates on where we stand in terms of the conversations with the town to try and achieve this.
John, they basically, in a nutshell, they just want to use our water main, which their water is in our water main to
Yeah.
supply Springdale Farms.
No, I get that, Carl. I just
Okay.
thought it would be a lot, the water main that you're going through is 40 years old, and the distance that you need to go from the Knollwood wells to the connection that we were just describing is maybe a couple of 100 yards. So I just didn't know if that would be an easier solution.
But they would still be using our main though.
I understand.
That's all.
My fear is our main will break. Does our main have the ability? The only breaks that we've had were at the intersection of Center Street and the end of Walpole, literally at the main intersection, right? Where we had the break right near on the town side, and then this break on Springdale and Spring Lane. Those are the only two water main breaks that I'm aware of.
Yes. There was also one on Church Street, in the past 5 years.
That was a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
I don't, the only thing that I would be concerned with is the loss of pressure on Meeting House. If they have a high demand.
There's nobody important on Meeting House. Don't
No,
worry
of
about
course there isn't.
it.
That's
John,
the only thing, and I brought that point up a year ago.
Adam, John, that's an inside joke. That's where I live. So that's
Yeah.
That was the only concern I had, and they did some pressure losses and so on and so forth. And Aquarian basically said you won't see any flow difference or pressure loss on Meeting House. That was one of my big concerns.
The two pressure zones, the pressure zone that the town's pipes are under and Springdale, they're effectively the same, what we call a hydraulic grade line. Which isn't actually surprising, because at one point in time, Carl, I believe those two systems were connected, right?
Which two?
What's that?
Which two systems?
Springdale and the town's piping?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a 12-inch main. There's no issues with that. We did have a break about 3 years ago on the brand new main, the 12-inch. But like I said, my concern was if they have a high demand in the Springdale Farm system, that the pressure loss, and I know you guys have increased the pressure on the town system, because we used to average about 55, now we're averaging 65, 70, and that could have been the cause of the Spring Lane break with the added pressure.
Yeah, the town system, we actually we put in valving to make sure that the pressure remained as it's always been in the downtown piping. So yeah, we should We should connect on that, Carl, just to make sure that we've got that valving set correctly.
It has increased. Cause we're doing a back-to-back water study on the town side. And it was 65, I believe, on Meeting House alone. And we've never had 65 on that side of the tracks.
Never.
So I don't know if that attributed to the break on Spring Lane, but I'm just saying that was pointed out from me a year ago when we got into this discussion.
Yeah, and as I said, Carl, we should connect because we specifically, when we did the work in that interconnection vault near the fire station, we replaced all the piping and valves. We added valves so that we could maintain the pressure that's always been downtown. And if the pressure's gone up, that means that valve needs to be adjusted.
Yeah.
So John, the other side of this was downtown. We're going to bring this summer, when our contractor delivers us the keys to the new community center, we're going to have a fancy new community center that'll come online literally right in the middle of the town. So I'm only imagining that the usage would go up, that if that's, I just want to be sure that the system, the oldest system, and literally the building is going to be located right between the only two places that the main has broken. So I don't want there to be breaks. I want it to work well. And I think it's a good segue, possibly, to your next slide, which is the solutions for the Springdale wells and the potential. Adam, you good with that?
Yeah, no, I'll hit on it too. And, John, obviously feel free to jump in here, right? I mean, I think as we're just discussing here, right, sort of the status quo, the historic arrangement that there is a bit cumbersome, right? I mean, I'll kind of just leave it there from a cumbersome perspective, right? We've got a contract that sort of defines the financial arrangement there, right? They're very much interconnected, and to solve the issues at Springdale Farms most cost effectively, it makes sense to bring water through there. So we're moving towards a world where it's even going to be more intertwined. And I think as you're hitting on there in terms of being able to provide the maintenance for that pipe that you own, it certainly is a liability for the town that doesn't have a dedicated funding source, right? I mean,
right.
And I took a look at you guys had a report done by CDM in 2020. They looked at what the replacement cost of that was, roughly $2 million to replace that main at some point. And so the way that we would look at this, I mean, we think a better long-term solution is to have us purchase that main from a regulated utility perspective. What is done here is that we purchase things essentially at their original cost less depreciation. That is, from a rate making perspective, that is how you typically purchase assets. And so based on that report and the additional depreciation since then, we're looking at that net book value, or that original costless depreciation, is about $23,000. And then I think it's worth noting too that in that report as well, the consultant had really recommended selling it. Kind of referencing that in general, when you talk about trying to fund and run a utility, you've got very high fixed costs. It benefits from economies of scale, and certainly the town just owning a little bit of pipe there doesn't get any of those benefits, right? So it's hard cost effectively, I think, for you guys to be able to want to continue to own that. So that's the piece that we're really, we would like the board to consider, because I think, we want to solve the Springdale Farms issue with a high sense of urgency, right? We would like that, but I think the strong, so wheeling water through there, we think, we'd like to get an authorization to do that. But then as a longer term piece here, I think there's a lot of merits to having us purchase that pipe.
Adam, I just wanted to hop in, John, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
One of the things we sometimes hear from people is that they're on town water. And so I know people on this call understand it, but I just want to make sure the public understands that all of the water that the town delivers is Aquarian water. We're simply in the delivery business. So this, if the selectmen and the town were to consider this sale, the water itself is not changing. It's just who's maintaining the pipes, who's fixing the water main breaks. I just want to make sure that's clear because sometimes there's some confusion with the public.
Yeah. Carl, what maybe if you're not the right person, maybe Kevin is. What was the cost to us to replace the break in both the Springdale / Spring Lane / Church Street this winter, and the cost to the town to replace the break that happened on Center Street at the Center Street and Walpole Street intersection?
Well, John, over the years, we've had a tremendous number of breaks. Like
Yeah.
3 years ago, I mean, it's not unknown to us
Yeah.
that the pipe has been in place for many years and is old and is compromised. And we've talked about the cost to at some point, we're going to have to replace all that pipe.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was getting to, Robin, that the cost benefit analysis is something we have been looking at for several years now. And I just thought that what might have been something that Kevin or we had to approve of for cost, or maybe it was just something that Kevin did out of the budget, from an operating standpoint. I don't remember there being
It was part of that CDM Smith study that we did. We wanted to understand what the replacement costs would be, and the $2 million is what those costs would be in 2022. That's what it was in 2020. That's what it was estimated, because we understood, based upon all the breaks, that at some point, if we continued to own the distribution system in the center of town, we would need to replace it.
Agreed. I was just trying to get an actual dollar value that it cost us this winter to do that one valve, or the one valve last year, at the one break this year and the one break last year. It had to be something. I don't recall that we had to have a vote on a separate amount of money to fix it. I just know that it was fixed because the guys were there every day for several days, digging it up and repairing it.
Yeah, I don't know if we
It was about $5,000, John.
Yeah, so I think there's equipment cost plus, staff cost. We could try to pull an estimate if that's helpful.
Yes. Yeah, so I guess off the top of my head, John, I don't have that quantified, but for a future later discussion, we did receive an air mark, and that work is wrapping up with a different consultant now. And part of that scope is to do an assessment of our system, what the value is. So a more current day assessment holistically, not just this section of the entire Dover water system, and also a capital improvement plan. So what we would know that we're going to be looking at over the next several years to start updating some of this infrastructure.
Could I quickly break in here? Is this the only section of pipe that the town of Dover owns, or do we have other pipe?
We have, the whole square is supplied by the town's infrastructure. Whiting Road, Church Street, Meeting House, part of Center Street, Whiting Road, I said that already. Springdale. There is a map of the water district, and it shows where the town is allowed to run their water mains.
So I think that
It's 69 customers, I believe it is. It does all the town buildings, in the surrounding spur roads off of that.
Yeah,
the map that's on the screen here, right? So that does show That is all of the town-owned pipe that is currently served with Aquarian water.
The red pipe
Yellow?
is the town-owned pipe.
Yeah, the red pipe's the town-owned pipe, the yellow is the customers.
Yes.
You'll notice that there are sections in the town center where there's both Aquarian-owned pipe and town-owned pipe right next to each other.
What I'm trying to wrestle in my mind is if we don't belong in the water pipe business as a municipality, then should we be looking at selling all of this to Aquarian and getting out of the business, or should we keep it as a capital asset? And just to let everyone know what's going through my mind, because if we're going to sell the Springdale Avenue, that big long connection, and we still have issues with pipe.
Yeah. And just to be clear, we're suggesting purchasing all of that pipe.
Right.
That is not just the Springdale Avenue connection, but all
So
of that
that's-
pipe
Right,
that's
so
in Redmond.
that's what's on the table,
Right.
this is part of the conversation. And there's no vote tonight, it's just
Mhm.
socializing this option and how Aquarian is looking at it.
But now it's a lot more than just that one 40-year-old run. There's the town center pipe as well.
Right, which incorporates, you mentioned, Adam mentioned the number of 60 homes, or John mentioned the number of 60 homes, but there's a lot more people in the town on Aquarian water, right? You've got of the 1,200 homes, you have just under 500, Adam, or somewhere. The number of homes in Dover that are served by
It's a
Aquarian.
little over 600 customers
600.
altogether.
Yeah, 600. I'm sorry, 600. So David, the impact of this is much larger than just the direct impact on the homes as it pertains to a cost benefit analysis. So
Yes, no, I'm just trying to learn here. You guys have been dealing with this for a few years, and so I'm trying to come up to speed.
yeah. Amanda, Adam, John, anything else that you would like to
Well,
add to this?
I mean, I think what I'd like to do is a takeaway, and you guys tell me if you think it's appropriate, right? I mean, I think as Selectman Hunter said, we're socializing this idea. I think we'd like to just put a formal proposal in front of you for
Okay.
this, right? So that you've got something to, that certainly, has well drawn out, maps that sort of just clearly laying out these pieces so that it's easier to wrap your heads around around it. So
And that would certainly be the next step.
yeah.
Yeah, Adam, that would be very helpful. Robin and I have been over many years in all the iterations of Aquarian and all the iterations of the companies that preceded you. We've been working through this. We've been problem solving. Typically, when situations arise that are either detrimental to the water, detrimental to the use, we've had to come up with solutions to those. This would certainly help us from a planning perspective. So if you would do that, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Okay.
Anything else? Any final thoughts on this before we move on?
No, I think we can move on to this possible interconnection.
Okay.
So yeah, let me introduce this, and then Amanda's gonna just kind of walk you through conceptually what we're talking about from an infrastructure perspective, right? But as John indicated, right, we've made these improvements to the system to, we consider short-term improvements, right, to try to tackle really primarily the iron manganese issues that's led to the dirty water, brown water situation. Over the long term, there's really kind of two options, right? We can put additional treatment at Francis, essentially expand the treatment facility there quite a bit to be able to address that. It's a relatively costly proposition to do that. And as we just talked about, when you have 600 or so customers, we are watching every dollar of capital that we spend because it can have dramatic impacts on rates, right? And so we are cautiously trying to find the most cost-effective long-term solutions on things. We have a pretty good relationship with Dedham Westwood Water District, and there is an opportunity that we're exploring to be able to do an interconnection with Dedham Westwood Water District. Dedham Westwood also buys water from NWRA as well. So from a supply perspective, they're not constrained in terms of being able to sell water. They've got a, you know, large, essentially because they can wheel NWA water through their system. And so from a water quantity perspective, it's fairly attractive. But yeah, let Amanda kind of just walk you through what the infrastructure might look like. And then I'm going to kind of hop back on and talk a little bit about not so much the engineering side of it, but what are some of the kind of practical challenges and that come with this as well. So Amanda, I'll turn it over to you. Maybe.
Amanda, you're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, we still can't hear you. Well, maybe John, do you want to maybe talk through this? Or I mean, I can too but.
Yeah, why don't one of you
Yeah.
get started? Maybe Amanda, we can figure out what's going on audio wise, but John, if you could start, that would be great.
Sure. Oh, excuse me. I took you guys off the screen for a second there. So the interconnection with Dedham Westwood Water District, their system, their distribution system really doesn't end too far from the boundary of Dover and Westwood, and that is shown on the screen here. Their existing piping is shown in green on the right-hand bottom part of that screen. Our infrastructure is over on Ledgewood Drive. That's the closest part of our distribution system to the Dover-Westwood border. So in terms of piping, it's just that black piece of piping that we would need connecting the two systems. The other infrastructure that is needed, Dedham Westwood is building a pump station, where they were planning, we're in the planning stages to replace a pump station. That serves a pressure zone that we would be connecting to. So we would be effectively in partnership with them and pay for a portion of that pump station, because they would have to upsize it to be able to provide us the water that we need. So the infrastructure would be that water main, a pump station that Dedham Westwood would own, and a meter vault just near the Dover-Westwood border. Amanda, are you on now?
I don't know. Am I working now?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
So I had to jump off and jump back on to get it to work. And so I missed most of what John said. But so I think you've probably gone over it. But essentially, we've been working with Dedham Westwood on whether they could upgrade their pump station to also be able to supply to meet peak hour demands in the Dover system. And in addition to the pump station upgrades, this project would require upgrading some of Dedham Westwood's water mains on Burgess Ave, and then constructing a new water main from the end of their system to the closest connection in the Dover system, which is at the corner of Hartford and Ledgewood Drive. I don't know if you mentioned this, John, but it would require a meter, a vault, which includes a flow meter to measure how much flow we are taking from Dedham Westwood, and a PRV, pressure reducing valve, to modulate the pressure down to meet what the system pressures are now in Dover. And the exact location of that vault is still to be determined, but we've been working, we're actively pursuing this with the goal that if this interconnection could get in place, it would give us the ability to remove the Francis well field and the Springdale wells, remove those from service. Right. I think Adam was going to go through some of the challenges that we're
Yeah.
facing with this.
Yeah, no, and I think from a water quantity perspective, where we see it is that we'd like to design this, like Amanda said, so that it can meet peak hour demand in Dover with no other sources running. But operationally, what we would anticipate is that you'd continue to use the Knollwood the Knollwood wells, which Knollwood wells by themselves generally meet winter demands, right? And so that this interconnection would likely be primarily used during the summer months during peak demands as well. I mean, we think that's going to be the most cost-effective way to do that. But yeah, just in terms of kind of schedule challenges, where do we stand with it? We've partnered with Dedham Westwood. We did a hydraulic feasibility study that we jointly funded to do exactly that, make sure the hydraulics of this can work. And like Amanda said, it's that pressure zone is at a higher pressure. The pressure zone where that pump station is at a higher pressure, and so we would need a PRV to be able to bring the water down to the pressure levels in Dover, and some additional water mains would need to be upsized in and around that pump station to accommodate the increased volume of water that would be going through there to feed Dover. So from a feasibility perspective, we figured out, yes, this can certainly work. We've started trying to put a framework together on what would a purchase water agreement look like. There's a bunch of moving parts to that. I think, as Amanda said, there would be some component of a capital contribution that we would be, in terms of, Aquarium would be paying for part of that upgrade of that pump station at some level. And then there's the rate of essentially a volumetric charge that we would have to pay to Dedham Westwood to be able to get their water. So we're getting that together right now. I mean, that is really, it's really a financial analysis as much as anything else, and beginning to have those conversations with them in terms of what that might look like. Ultimately, any of that's going to need to get approved by the board at Dedham Westwood Water District as well. So if we can get there on those pieces, right, then what we're looking at is the design work for this pump station to get to 100% design would happen over this summer. Dedham Westwood would be responsible for construction, so they've got to follow their sort of municipal procedures there, which would mean bid documents, et cetera, going out in the late fall. And construction would likely take about a year. And so you're now putting your schedule there likely sometime in the spring of 2026. Again, this is sort of if everything can go well. And really the couple of biggest challenges that we have to navigate here. Obviously, we got to figure out an agreement with Dedham Westwood and Aquarian, right? We haven't done that yet, right? So I mean, this is two water systems that have to come together and negotiate and find something that's going to work. And as we were hitting on we are motivated to do this on two fronts. One, we think from a reliability, water quality, water quantity perspective, this is a great solution. We also view it as the low cost option for solving those problems as well too. But that viewpoint is predicated on being able to come to an agreement with Dedham Westwood Water District that is, advantageous, right? That certainly they've got to have the right incentives in there to do it, but we need to make sure that any agreement remains the most cost-effective option. So that some work we have in front of us. Secondly, and which is a different challenge, is because Dedham Westwood Water District is an MWRA community, they buy about 10% of their water comes from MWRA. They cannot sell water to a non-MWRA community. So we have started conversations with MWRA around what would it take for the Aquarium water system in Dover to be able to essentially get that status as an MWRA community. It's a little bit of a unique situation for MWRA. We haven't gotten an easy answer on it because some of it comes back to the founding legislation of MWRA, their current procedures for how they admit folks into it. And a lot of that was all written around municipal owned water systems. And so we've got to just figure out how to navigate that. The good news is that MWRA is broadly supportive of this. Everybody agrees that, hey, this sounds like a good solution. We just need to figure out how to navigate the requirements that are there under the founding legislation of MWRA, and be able to kind of do it within that framework and within their, I'll use the word bureaucracy. I mean, and I don't mean it in a negative way. It's just there's a lot of steps to becoming an MWRA community in terms of boxes that have to be checked, permitting, et cetera, and we've got to navigate some of that. And so we're in the process of sorting that out. And I hope that we'll have some clearer direction in the next few weeks with them on that. But that is what might come out of that, though, is that we might need to make a joint application between the town of Dover and Aquarian Water Company to be able to achieve this.
Adam, who owns Westwood Dedham as the water company?
Yeah, so Dedham Westwood is a legislated water district. Right, so
But
created
who owns that? Who would Aquarian and Dover be negotiating with?
So it's essentially it's its own municipal entity, right? So
And I think our closest example would be, it's like our region schools.
Yeah,
They're their own body. Yeah.
Right. There's a governing body. I'm sure there's a committee that is elected from maybe from Westwood, from Dover, that jointly oversees the process.
Yes. Yeah, I think they have 3 members that are elected from the town of Dedham, or maybe they might be appointed by the boards as well too. But yeah, there's 3 members from Dedham, there's 3 members from Westwood, I believe.
Okay. Robin, Dave, questions?
I
So
do. Robin, you want to go ahead?
Right, so, I certainly understand from a business perspective, this makes a lot of sense to Aquarian. I also think what we need to think about is the users in Dover, and how is this gonna impact the cost of water to those in Dover? Because already those individuals on Aquarian Water have some of the highest rates in the nation, I believe, for water. And I would imagine that some of this capital expense would need to be passed on to the users. Also, what I would like to understand better is, I know from some of the water studies that we've done that there's a cost to connect a community to MWRA, and that cost exists whether or not you're able to connect through another community.
Mhm.
So I would assume that Aquarian connecting to Dedham Westwood, there's going to be some kind of a connection fee that MWRA will charge. It's a reduced fee because we're coming through Dedham Westwood. So, I think it's important to understand all of these components for us as as a Board of Selectmen in Dover.
And I can
understand.
Sorry.
Because, most towns can spread that MWRA connection fee over all their taxpayers. I'm not sure that we can, because it's not benefiting all of our taxpayers. And maybe we can. So.
Yeah. No, and you raise very valid points, right? And so I started this conversation by saying we are looking at what is the lowest cost alternative to solve these problems, right? And the reason we are pursuing this is because it is significantly, at least how we're viewing it right now, it is at a significantly lower cost than trying to put treatment at Francis Street.
Okay.
To solve the problems, because you're 100% right. The effect on rates it's paramount, and it's top of mind as we evaluate how to solve these problems. We are in a good spot though from a connection fee perspective, because right now, what are right now at what MWRA at a high level, MWRA has roughly 25 MGD, million gallons per day of capacity that they are looking to try to sell.
Okay.
And what they have done to incentivize that is essentially, for the time being, they have waived connection fees. Right. So that's the other sort of
Right.
opportunity.
I wasn't sure if
that's in
that was
front of us.
still what they were doing. Okay.
Yeah. So, but again, how long that lasts, who knows, right? And so there is certainly some urgency on our part to try to take advantage of this. I mean, in one, we want the water quality problem solved as quickly as possible.
Are you all
David?
set, Robin?
I am.
Adam, so following up on that, are there any long-term obligations to the town of Dover if we join MWRA?
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about, would they have requirements to provide water then to all of Dover? And much more on my mind is, it is my layperson's understanding, at least in days of yore, that if you got water, you had 10 years to put in sewer. And if you had sewer, you had 10 years to put in water. And I would want to see on MWRA letterhead a statement saying that there's going to be no obligations to the town of Dover for the expansion of the water system or any sewer obligations.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. So let me hit the last point first, right? I'm not aware of any such conditions like that, right? And the admission criteria for water and wastewater are very different, very separate processes and I'm not aware of any place where they're I certainly haven't seen it in any regulation where they're tied together. So that's the first time I'm hearing that per se, and none of the consultants we've worked with or anyone else has brought that up to us. But I will certainly.
If you would be so kind as to ask the question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm looking down the road and all of a sudden, in a 10-year trip, all right, Dover, now you got to put in sewer, and it would bankrupt the town.
Right.
So
at the end of the day, right, and these are great questions, right? Because at the end of the day, what happens is once you've navigated the MWRA process, right, and you have the right standing, at the end of the day, you're essentially just entering into an agreement with MWRA. You're entering into a contract with MWRA with certain obligations that come with that. What we're anticipating is that that contract would be between Aquarian and MWRA. And essentially that would, so financial obligations, other obligations, it would fall to Aquarian. That's how we see it ideally. But that's part of where we've got to navigate with MWRA and say, hey, so are they going to look for the town of Dover to also be a party to this contract at the end of the day? But certainly, we can all, at the end of the day, contracts can be navigated, right? In terms of making sure that the town does not incur any long-term obligations from MWRA as part of an agreement for us to be able to purchase water.
All right, we're going to leave that part right there, and we're just going to move to this where we have very little time left. So, John, can you give us, in as few words as possible, what's happening with the sale of Aquarian by Eversource?
Yeah, I'll take that, John.
Sure.
So in February, Eversource announced that they are exploring the sale of Aquarian. Yep. They've owned us for about 7 years now. Previous to that, we were owned by an infrastructure fund for about 10 years. Before that, a UK utility. And before that, Aquarian was a public company, right? So Aquarian's been in continuous operation for 165 years plus, with various sort of corporate parents. So Eversource has announced that they're looking to divest of Aquarian, not due to the operations of Aquarian in general. I mean, not in general. I mean, everything's performing well, both operationally and from a business side of things, but it is really a function of wanting to. They've had some setbacks in the offshore wind business, et cetera, and they think they really just want to focus on being a pure energy company and not be in the water business. So they've announced this intention to do it. They're going through a process, and they will likely, there will be some interested parties that will want to, probably make a bid to want to purchase Aquarian. At the end of the day, any new corporate parent, it has to be approved at Mass DPU, right? So it's regulated by DPU. So they would have to go to DPU and get approval for it. Massachusetts has what's called a net benefit standard as well on something like this, and so it would actually require that the new corporate parent comes in and shows a benefit to them taking over. It's not good enough to just say, "Hey, we'll maintain the status quo." They've got to show benefits within the state of Massachusetts. So I think at the end of the day, you're from a town perspective, you're probably going to notice very little in terms of how things would change. You're going to be talking with and dealing with the same people as you are today.
And last item, water conservation reminders.
Yeah, so we've have a requirement of the Water Management Act to restrict non-essential outdoor water use from May 1st to September 30th. And under non-drought conditions, which we are under right now, the restriction, it's restricting non-essential outdoor water use to 2 days per week. The specific days depend on your address, an odd or even address, and it's watering before 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m. That's non-essential outdoor water uses, and the biggest one there is irrigation. Folks can refer to our website. It's shown here on the screen to get the details of the days that they can water and what we mean by non-essential outdoor water use. We did send a postcard to all of the customers about a month ago with those details. One side of the postcard is shown on the screen here. Our webpage, again, referenced above, has those same details. And also the next week, I believe, a newsletter, our standard springtime newsletter, is going to go to customers with this same information in it. So in this, the Water Management Act permit requirement actually aligns with our corporate standard for irrigation restrictions. So that's good news that it's aligned with our standard practices.
Yeah, thank you for that. What I would ask Chris Costello, if you could take that, and if you can't just grab a screenshot of that, I'm sure I have one. I have 2 or 3 actually. Robin's got one, David's got one. We all received them. It would be great to take it, put it up on our website, and have it literally right in front on our landing page, reminding that beginning this week, beginning May 1st, it's already underway, that this is a requirement and that's something people should be mindful of. So Chris, if you could do that, I think that would be really helpful to all the people in Dover who are on Aquarian. We're going to leave it there. We've got to move on. Amanda, thank you. John, thank you. Adam, thank you very much. I'm sure we will see you all again, and ask that you do put that together, work with Mike to make this happen, so we can keep this in front of us and keep this moving forward, as the issue of water is critically important to us in every aspect. So thank you all for your time, and appreciate everything you've put into this evening.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
We are going to move on to item 4. And interestingly enough, we're going to be speaking with Anna Nagy from the Conservation Commission with regards to water. Anna, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good. I hope you found that riveting presentation.
Yeah, it was good. It was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keeping up the theme of water, I'm back to report on everything I learned from town council on conservation laws, deed restrictions, and what we can do with trying to restrict land for conservation and water use. So if you guys have specific questions I can answer, I can just give it from top to bottom.
We have in our packet, we have a graphic of the land, some of the land that was that we just transferred.
Yep.
Lots of it, the ones on Haven, certainly quite literally in my backyard, the Ponzi land, the commission land, the Chickering farm. One of the things that's really been on people's mind is there's a lot of water. There's a lot of wetlands, certainly on the Ponzi land, the commission land that's on the corner of Haven and Church Street. There's a lot of wetlands behind the Ponzi land, and in the old well that was part of Church Street where we used to draw water from. I think given the topic, we'd all would be very interested in what are our rights to use any of that, and of course, what are the restrictions for any of the abutters that are in and around that those areas. That would be my questions. Robin.
Sure.
Dave, do you have any specific things that you would like Anna to cover? Because I just want to be mindful of her time and the rest of the agenda.
That's okay.
I guess I would like to learn what Anna has to say, and if you could just zip through it quickly, I'd be grateful.
Sure.
Robin, you good with that?
Robin, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
I am good with that.
Perfect.
Thanks, Anna.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me back. So the land we transferred was not the Ponzi land. We transferred Valley Farm on Haven, but not Ponzi, and not the Church Street well. Those were left off because of the water question. So the land we transferred is under the state conservation protection, more or less. It's the amendment to the Commonwealth Constitution that says in order to take things out of conservation, you have to work with the state legislature, get a supermajority. At this point, there was a new law in 2023 that said if you want to take land out, you have to swap it for equal or better. So that's the existing conservation land. That's anything that's owned by conservation for conservation purposes. So the reason we left out Ponzi and Church Street well is because groundwater is a resource that conservation protects, we have learned. So if we want to drill a well on it and drink the groundwater, it's similar to draining a pond. So that's why we didn't want to have a stricter restriction. If we wanted to deed restrict Church Street, that's the other option. So we could say Church Street is okay for conservation and water. Ponzi is already deed restricted for conservation water, but it's not managed by the Conservation Commission. So our land management budget doesn't go toward it. So if anyone wanted trails or bog bridges or stuff like that, that's technically on the town generally, not on us. So that would be the reason to move those, but we wouldn't necessarily want to move them for conservation purposes unless everyone sort of wanted to let go of the idea of wells on the Ponzi land or something, which to me doesn't necessarily seem like it's a common sentiment. But the main thing is we're trading off and making decisions on how to protect land. Is if we want to protect things for conservation water, it's a deed restriction. It could be changed in a town meeting vote like what we just did, where we took a bunch of tax taken land and deed restricted it and moved it to conservation. So we could change deed restrictions. We can't just move things out of conservation land easily. It can be done, but it's not super easy. The other gray area is that, and this is what Nina was pointing out at the very end, that if something is for conservation purposes and water, such as Ponzi, but has never been used for water, there may be some gray area about whether it's already protected. Unknown, we'd have to figure that out. Those are the main points I learned. We have the state level protections. We have deed restrictions, which would allow us to say like, hey, it's for passive recreation and maybe water, but isn't protected as heavily. And then
Wouldn't
there's
require
the,
supermajority. That's what
wouldn't
we're
require the
trying to get away from.
supermajority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ponzi's already there, and we could advance the concept of Church Street Wells getting that same deed restriction. It would be one step closer, and that would allow your commission to steward the property, or no?
Yes, it just wouldn't allow us to, keep it very conserved. And if it was never used for water, it may still be conserved. We'd have to like work closely with Nina to figure that out. But that's where we start getting into case law and not very clear, constitution.
So I'm a little confused. I just don't.
It is very
understand
confusing. This took me like a month to sort out.
Right, the distinction you're making. So,
Yeah.
so first of all, I'm pretty certain the Church Street wells or any water there would be contaminated because that's where the plume is.
Mhm.
And that's why we had to shut off the town water system. Also we do have water rights on the Ponzi property. I think the advantage to us would be to put monitoring wells on there. Keep in mind, there is no Dover infrastructure. So the only advantage for us that I can see of is to put monitoring wells on those properties so that we can continue to monitor the groundwater levels, which is really important to us as a town. And I mean, even contaminated wells allow us to even contaminated water allows us to monitor the level.
Water levels, right.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, another thing too, someone
Yeah,
brought this up. I'd love to claim this as my own concept, but if we ever needed to pressurize the downtown for fire protection only, the Church Street wells could be used for that.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah,
So-
Dave,
Interesting.
Kevin's on the call now. There is a study currently, or a feasibility study currently underway to look at that as a possible option.
I told you it wasn't my idea.
To answer the question about what it means for abutters, if we were to make this managed by the Conservation Commission, we could put in trails, we could put in bog bridges, we could stay far away because no one wants any changes. Sorry about that. So it would just basically be conservation land. If people wanted trails, we could do trails. I would find it unlikely we would do more than cut a few trails and maybe put a few planks down. But it could be, it's 30 acres on Ponzi. We could do something more interesting with more trails.
So
There
are
are
you,
options there.
are you basically saying that with a deed restriction, you can't do that? With a deed restriction?
No.
Water use? Is that what you're saying?
With the deed restriction, we can restrict it to whatever we want because it's a deed restriction. So we could say conservation, passive recreation, water. We could say passive recreation only. If we moved it to the Conservation Commission and said it was held by the Conservation Commission for conservation purposes, then it would be under the state protections and it would be stricter. So I think that's mostly what we're trying to steer clear of.
Okay.
Anna, just so you know, there's a really nice trail that goes from Haven Street on the Ponzi land all the way around Henry's farm and goes back up to the land at Springdale at the newly acquired land that we have. But if you were on the trail right now, you would be up to your knees in water. It's really wet.
Interest you in a bog bridge.
Yes,
It might be a very long bridge.
It'd be a long bridge,
Yeah.
but in the winter it's really cool. And when it's frozen, there's beautiful land back there. It just goes literally right around Henry's farm all the way to Trout Brook and Circle, and it's a great piece of property and it's beautifully connected. So thank you for doing all this work. By the way, this is a lot of work. This is a lot of research. It's not easy. It's great to have it. We really do appreciate just another level of detail for this. And these are assets that we have to maintain.
Yeah. And of course I did not do all of it. Amy is on the call and those are all her maps and she pulled a lot of this, most of this together, all of it basically. Justine did, like there's a bunch of, I just got to do the last leg and stand up in front of everyone.
Well, thank you to everyone.
Yeah. Amy, anything you'd like to add? Take that as a no. Anna, thank you.
I just can't unmute. That's all. Sorry. No, I don't think Anna covered, I think, most of it. I guess Ponzi, as you know, connects to DLCT's Greg Land and would provide possibly trail access to that, which the Greg Land is moderately difficult to access, or very difficult to access actually. So that's one of the reasons that I had put Ponzi on the list. The other advantage to having it under the Conservation Commission, whether or not it's under Article 97 protection, is because, as Anna said, we can spend management money on it. And as climate change increases the number of invasives that we're fighting, that's probably after trails, our next line of defense, so to speak, or initiative will be to try and work on some of the invasives management on the land. So
thank you.
The other option, the other reason. And obviously, the more of these wetlands that you have, the higher quality and quantity of groundwater you have for all of your wells.
Yeah.
Whether they're aquarian or not.
Thank you both very, very much. We really appreciate the work.
Of course, thank you.
Have a great night. We're going to move to item 5, a discussion on the Willow Street Culvert Replacement Project. The vote is in advance of funds in lieu of borrowing for Willow Street Culvert Replacement award bid arrangement agreement in the amount of $498,000 to R. Bates and Son, Inc. for the construction service on the culvert replacement project. The approved master professional service agreement in the amount of $63,000 between the town of Dover and Woodard and Curran for professional engineering services for the culvert replacement. Our DPW Director, Kevin McCabe, is here. Kevin is going to discuss the Willow Street Culvert Replacement Project, including the bid process, findings in the agreement for construction and engineering. Kevin is requesting authorization from the board for an advance fund in lieu of borrowing, which will allow the use of $613,000 of the town's available cash to fund the Willow Street Culvert Replacement Project as voted on at the May 2024 town meeting. The funds will be reimbursed after completion of the borrowing process. Kevin, that a fair summary?
John, I think he covered all of it, so I don't know what you left for me. But yeah, this is a similar process the town endeavored on last year with Claybrook Road. The advantage to that is the finance director, the interim finance director. We got to take the bonding out later. I believe he just pulled the papers for Claybrook Road itself on May 10th to go through that process. So 10% of that, right, was a construction contingency. So the goal and the hope is we don't touch any of that money, so we don't need to bond it. The master service agreement with Woodard and Curran, that's a do not exceed. That's an estimated hourly of 8 hours per week to oversee monumental and milestones of the project, and also to review all of the shop drawings, the precast culvert, all the materials that'll be used on site. So it's a do not exceed. So again, the advantage is that we bond, in lieu of funds at the end of the process. When we actually have that number, we would actually be bonding against what we actually expended versus the potential anticipation of the full 12.5% construction admin services and 10% of a construction contingency. And then also we received the flooding assistance funds. So as also mentioned on the Warren and town meeting, that we're planning to use $305,000 of that money to offset this overall $498,000. So we just need to confirm with our interim finance director, the state and town accountant, that these funds can be directly applied to that. So with all these things and going for us, that's why we're asking to borrow in lieu of advance the funds. And then also to expedite the construction process. So this gets us queued up with the precaster, which will be the longest part of the project. So once all the construction documents are delivered, signed, we get that package back and then be able to work with Chris and Town Administrator Blanchard to get kind of the scheduling and the traffic management plan and all that out to the public.
Thank you. That's an excellent summary and synopsis of it, Kevin. Appreciate it. The do we have, when we do the, and I thank you for using Claybrook, because this is exactly what I was thinking, is similar to the Claybrook process. The Claybrook process, I just would remind everybody, is on budget. It's actually ahead of schedule, which has been a great thing. One of the reasons that made it ahead of schedule is we did this similar type of process, so we would be able to schedule, so we would be able to have scheduling on our side and scheduling in advance. We also had the ability to do it so a lot of the digging and construction could be done in a time when it was conducive weather-wise to it. So we didn't have a lot of delays, weather-related delays. So I assume that would be consistent with this, right, Kevin?
Yeah, and the other significant timeline delay is, this funding choice that the town decided on at town meeting and versus using free cash, is we don't have to wait till July 1 to enter in a contract agreement to expend the funditures as well.
Got it. Robin, any questions? You are muted.
I do not have any questions. Actually, Kevin answered my question in his explanation about the funds, the state funds for flooding that would hopefully be used to offset this.
David?
This is just an expedition process of jumping on this and getting it to go a month early. That's what I'm seeing. So if there's no other downside, I'm all in.
Kevin, any other downside?
No, the goal is there's in the clause in the contract, there's a 90-day substantial completion. So once we actually, break ground, right, they would have 3 months to basically open the road back up.
Got it. David, I've read through the 36 pages that Mona provided us. I didn't find any typos, but I'll defer to you.
All right, on page 4 now.
So why don't we make the motion?
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
I move to approve an advance of funds in lieu of borrowing for funding in the amount of $613,000 for Willow Street culvert replacement. I move to approve the bid agreement in the amount of $498,000 to R. Bates and Sons, Inc. for construction services on the culvert replacement project. I move to approve the master professional service agreement in the amount of $63,000 between the town of Dover and Woodard and Curran for professional engineering services for the culvert replacement project.
Seconded. All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
Kevin, thank you.
Thank you to the board. My department looks forward to successfully navigating another project for the community.
Thank you very much. So one of the downsides of 68 pages is you have to actually scroll through all the bids and the bonds and all of the documents And if you use the bar on the right and go too fast, Mona, is there another on this one, or do we
Yes,
go to the next one?
there's
one more.
agenda item one, we're now in the second PDF,
PDF.
right?
Yes.
PDF number 2, which was item 1.6 through
Yeah, the end.
through the end, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Because if you send me a third one, I'm not reading it.
No.
And actually, 1.6 was easy because it was the intergovernmental agreement.
Agreement between the
selectmen and
cemetery, Board of Selectmen, and the Cemetery Commission. Mikey,
We
why
already
don't
talked about it. You just want to make the motion, or is there anything to discuss?
No, I mean,
Well,
it's the last piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I appreciate Kevin's still on. He's worked very hard, Bob Tosi, with the cemetery commissioners, with Rusty. Cemetery did vote to enter, into this sort of trial agreement similar to Parks and Rec. Again, for the board's and the public's benefit, this is kind of an overarching intergovernmental agreement. And then sort of the cemetery commission and Rusty will continue to work with Kevin and DPW and sort of the day-to-day operational concerns and ironing out kind of the day-to-day stuff. But this is just kind of the overall broad agreement, very similar or almost identical to Parks and Rec that you voted previously.
I have no questions or comments, but other than say thank you to everybody for the cooperation and for the ability of sharing and the resources and just, the willingness to work as under the same umbrella. Robin or Dave, would you like to add anything?
Nope.
Oh, I'm gonna move to approve the intergovernmental agreement between the Board of Selectmen and the Cemetery Commission regarding supervision of town staff and the operation of Highland Cemetery as amended.
Seconded. All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
Thank you very much. We are going to move to updates from the Board of Selectmen and for then from Chris. So for updates, we have covered a lot this evening. There's not a whole lot to cover for me because you heard from Amy, Open Space.
John, I'm sorry. So they look similar, but we actually, I was going to do a brief update on goals and objectives before we got to your general update.
Sorry, I skipped one.
That's okay. And I know it's a long night, so I can try to move
back to you
quicker.
I will rewind back to Michael Blanchard.
Thanks.
Board of Selectmen 2024 goals and objectives. Michael.
Thank you. So this time each year, this is my first time, but generally the board likes to take this opportunity with about a month left to kind of review where we're at with FY24 goals and priorities as we prepare for 2 things. So one is, and we'll talk a little bit about the updates, the town administrator evaluation process. And then also as we're going to start to prepare our summer planning meeting schedule to start looking at next year's goals and priorities as well. So we still, like I said, we still have a month left, but it's a good time to review. So quickly, for a refresher for the board and the public, the goals and priorities were broken down into kind of 6 categories, and I'll go into them in more in depth, but generally it was culture of management, technology and communication, town operation and services, bylaw changes, staffing, and then other is a kind of a catch-all for a few other items that didn't really fit in the other categories.
Special projects.
Special projects. That's probably a better word for next year than other. Yeah. So in terms of culture of management, the first was defining the role of the Board of Selectmen. And as you know, and I was very fortunate, as Bob came up earlier tonight, I didn't have the opportunity to work with Bob very long, but I feel very fortunate that we worked very closely together for his last few months on the board in trying to get through a lot of these priorities. And one was, Bob worked very hard to finalize a Board of Selectmen roles and responsibilities document. And, that was vetted, with other boards and committees. We shared it with them. It went through town council review. We included a graphic of the town org chart to help people understand the complexity of governance in Dover with all the different independent boards and committees that is, unique to smaller towns. And we also suggested that other boards perhaps look at doing something similar so that residents can understand what each role of each board and committee are. So, I marked that as complete because we did finish the document, but, as you'll see with a lot of these goals and objectives last year weren't a check mark, done, move on. They're more of a living document. So it's something that we want to continue to look at, continue to edit. But that was a really pretty successful process. That document touched on some of these other things as well. So, in terms of succession planning, defining the role of the warrant committee. And again, the board had a pretty extensive discussion at the time. It was very clear that the board wasn't looking to step on the warrant committee's toes at all, but just that the warrant committee had reached out and talked about what their role looks like and how we can better work together. So we spent a lot of time on that as well. And then lastly was the town meeting working group that was put together. I think Mr. Haviland in his former role served on that working group. Our communication consultant actually met with that group as well. And one of the things that came out of that group was the warrant article guidelines, which we published and shared with the public. This year in particular, not only the boards and committees that brought articles forward, as you know, we had 2 citizens petitions and provided that document to them as well. And generally, the feedback on that was very positive. And again, learning and growing what worked, what didn't, will continue to update that document. Technology and communication. So again, we were focusing on the website, public communication notification, and what we call digital transformation, which really we're looking at kind of online permitting. So in terms of the website, we had originally put that on pause until we hired a new assistant town administrator, which we did. Very happy that Chris joined us. And so that's still an in-progress project that Chris is handling. Chris has worked with our current web provider. He has reached out and is starting to provide trainings to department users. So the individual departments are able to update their websites, provide current and complete information. And Chris and a part-time employee are actually going through the existing website now to make sure it's up to date, refreshed, so that we are better prepared when we look to do a complete overhaul and upgrade of the website. So that is in progress now and will be ongoing. Public communication notification. Again, Chris happened to come to us as a communication guru and expert, which we took full advantage of. We've done a few things, and I think what we'll do at some point is have Chris provide a broader presentation on his communication efforts, but he was able to give me some data. I just wanted to share some of the highlights of how our communication is improved. So in terms of email, we switched to Constant Contact as our provider, which we find to get better engagement, gives us much better data and tracking. It's easier for residents to sign up, to unsubscribe, to change email addresses. And we actually saw a 52% increase in subscribers to our news and alerts in the newsletter over the past, since October through current, so less than a year. For our website, as we continue to just try to keep that fresh before we do a full upgrade, we've seen our views increase 7.62%, with the actual users increasing 30%. Our biggest area improvement has been social media. This is just a pure Chris alone number. Chris has produced a 349% increase in posts. So we're using social media much more. We're getting tremendous feedback, just really positive. That's where, good, bad, or indifferent, that seems to be where everybody gets their information from. So having a consistent feel and look to our posts, really tells people, all right, this is an official notice from the town of Dover. It gets a lot of traction. It's shared on other, private Dover Facebook groups, and so that it continues to spread. We've saw a 139% increase on post reach and a 202% increase in post impressions. So, it's really been a very effective strategy. As you know, we are still, as I said, in some aspects, it's complete in that we've made this initial press, but we do have a lot of ongoing efforts, particularly with the communication study. We've done some new things, like include a communication sign-up brochure and a tax bill mailing. We did a new town meeting mailing, kind of a guide to town meeting, which was very well received as well. This year, we had a lot of positive feedback. So, there's been a lot of great efforts by a lot of people, but I'd really specifically like to highlight Chris and thank him for his efforts. And lastly, digital transformation. We made a decision to defer the online permitting. We just did not have the bandwidth this past fiscal year to take that on. And probably even more importantly, we don't have the funds to do so. So I think, as the board knows, it was a difficult budget year, and there was a decision to not include the permitting as part of our operating or capital budget, but to take advantage of state grants. Each fall, there is a state grant for technology, and a big component of that is online permitting. There are many towns now who are on their second and third iteration of upgrades to their online permitting. So we think we're in a really strong position this fall to apply as just a first-time applicant who has no online permitting presence. So we're very hopeful for that. I believe that process opens up in September, maybe October. So Chris and I are already meeting. We're preparing for that, trying to do some prep work so that we're ready to go when that goes live. So I'd like to see that again in the FY25 goal.
Michael, I'm just going to be right back. I'm not leaving you. I just have to shut an alarm off. I'll be right back.
Okay. The next priority was town operations and services, and our focus area was on the treasurer and accounting operations. As you know, we unfortunately continue to see some departures in that office unexpectedly. Part of the key to this priority and focus area was, we had staff in place. Life happens. We currently have an interim consultant treasurer collector and an interim assistant treasurer collector. So this is very much still in progress and will continue into the next fiscal year. However, that being said, we certainly did make progress in this regard, in that we did update our investment policy, and we have in place, and not trying to suck up to Dave or Kate, but an excellent financial investment advisory working group. I think that might be the official name. I'm not sure. Which is working with our staff, both our interim. Well, I guess they're all interim finance director, interim treasurer collector, and interim assistant treasurer collector. And so, this certainly will continue to develop and grow into the next fiscal year, particularly as we move forward with a new combined recruitment for a finance director / treasurer collector. I was going to do it under our updates, but I'll just share now. I was able to speak with Community Paradigm, Bernie Lynch, who has done a couple successful recruitments for us. He is very interested in working with us again. And I actually think during this meeting, I saw an email come through from him, with an engagement letter. And if he and I are able to work through that, my plan is to bring that to your next meeting for a vote, or a potential vote to proceed with those recruitment with Community Paradigm. So again, that's
right. And Mike, I really foresee this being a priority for us this coming year, because we do need to implement changes, and you can only do that with permanent staff. So the sooner we fill some of these positions, the sooner we'll be able to be successful. And
absolutely, yeah. We need our team, in place. I'm very grateful to all of our consultants, but you're right, they're helping us move along, but they're not necessarily here full time. You know, our interim finance director is only here 3 days a week and not all 3 full days. You know, our consultants are terrific. But again, they're only here for a short period of time. So I completely agree with you. I think this will be a real priority to get our full-time staff in place.
Right.
The next one is bylaw changes. So I think, as the board knows, and it's no surprise, this was a little controversial, and we did get some feedback from board and committees with some concerns. But where this boiled down was, again, the board is very respectful and understands the town bylaws to provide a framework for how the board operates, how other independent boards and committee operates. But there was an effort to understand that you know, that these independent boards and committees with independent employees worked for a time, but we're reaching a point now where we really need to try to work under a bigger umbrella. And so whether that's unofficially by having, and we'll see in a minute, better relationships with boards and committees and independent staff through this office, but also things like we just did, an MOA or intermunicipal agreement with Parks and Rec and Cemetery. So, you know, even if it didn't result in a bylaw change, it's taking advantage of boards and committees trying to work together for the betterment of Dover, doing the right thing and trying to put groups that make sense together. And I think, you know, it is a trial, but I do anticipate those 2 agreements are going to be very successful. And, you know, myself, I've worked very hard to build relationships with staff I don't supervise, and also trying to meet with the chairs of board and committees, connect them with our office, with our HR department, to make sure that even if supervision is done in sort of these independent silos, we're using and following the right policies and procedures and handling issues all the same way. And that's been,
You know, and Mike, in hindsight, I think the title of this is not really what the intent was. The intent was really to try and streamline reporting so that we could be more efficient. And I would say what we were able to accomplish with Park and Rec and the Cemetery Commission is exactly what we were trying to achieve through this bylaw, or through this is what we were trying to achieve in this goal. So I would say it's unfortunate, the title, because it wasn't really the intent. And I would say big success here, you know, in getting those intergovernmental agreements in place, because I agree with you, it is going to be really, really successful in the end.
Yeah, it's Mike, I think it would be really helpful for our planning purposes this summer if you could just send us the slides, because as I've been taking notes and the notes that we have on our various goals and objectives, there are some that we are going to enhance, some that we can cross off, some that, you know, we all tend to do this from a planning standpoint in very different ways, but we get to the same, we get to the agreed upon goals and objectives each year. We really just do it in very different ways. So I think it would be helpful to have this as we as we begin the planning process and we look at all the accomplishments from this year and last year. So this would be very helpful for each of us to have individually.
Absolutely. So the next priority was staffing, you know, specifically looking at recruitment and onboarding. And, you know, it has been a very successful year. You know, we've brought on, we mentioned Chris, our assistant administrator, our police chief, you know, our director of human resources came on to our side full time. You know, we brought on a new town planner, local building inspector. We have a new admin at our council on aging. We've hired some DPW positions. Thanks to the board and the police union, we bring on a civilian dispatcher for the first time, which has been very successful. So really, you know, I think a lot of this being some new blood and specifically having a full-time HR director, this has been very successful. Again, we have more unanticipated vacancies. You know, we're never at full staff for more than a minute, but we do hope to get back there. The other thing we did with this is we did spend a lot of time as we prepared for the FY20 budget process, kind of assessing our overall staff needs and identifying what critical positions we needed. You know, particularly things that have been lacking, and how we kind of weather continued turnover. Again, we all know it was a difficult budget season, and we did have to remove some of those positions that we did look at. But as we went through the budget process with you, with the warrant committee, and I think the chair, Kim Hudson, at town meeting mentioned this, even though we were able to remove them, it doesn't mean they're not needed. And so these are things that we do need to continue to look at, how we can either absorb some of these responsibilities, or if truly some of these positions do need to come back at a future time.
Right, and Mike, because you won't give yourself credit, so I will give you credit where credit is due. I think the one thing that you really did was create a team environment in the townhouse. And when I walk into the townhouse, there's a completely different vibe. Everybody's smiling, everybody's helping everyone else, each other out. And I think we can, and I think we have to give credit to you for really, building a team with the old and new FTEs in the town. And that's just so important and really appreciative.
Yeah, here.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Agreed.
And then our last category, which I think to Robin's point, we'll rename special projects, was obviously the community center, which is ongoing. We've worked, as because it's been before, we've worked through change orders, everything from asbestos to office space and staffing, different abutter concerns. But that continues to move forward. Unfortunately, I wasn't sure the right word. I worked with Mona, concluded or terminated the Hale CR process. It's hard to put into words how much time over the years has gone into that for it to unfortunately just be concluded. But that's just the reality. So that's coming off the plate. The 3 to 5 committee is ongoing. I've been invited to attend their next meeting to help them move through their next step in the process. So as soon as that's scheduled, and then eventually they'll be before you to provide an update. And then, as I mentioned before, continuing to improve communication with boards and committees. As I said, I've met with chairs. Working actually, great suggestion to Carol Lisbon. I mentioned that I wanted to meet quarterly with planning, Board of Health, conservation. She recommended we all do it together. So we're going to start to do that, have all kind of the land use health boards meet, so that not only I am in the room with them, but they're in the room with each other.
That's a great idea.
So I think that'll really be good. Because again, they are all independent, but yet we all work so closely together. So I think it's really important to build those relationships. Some of the other things I just want to mention, in hindsight, I think probably, I know for sure, actually, my biggest time commitment has just kind of been general onboarding this year. So that wasn't on our goals and objectives for me, but that's where so much of the time went in terms of just learning, meeting people, getting out into the community. It's been an awesome experience, but I keep trying to remind myself I haven't even been here a year yet. So that's certainly still sometimes it seems like 5 years, but it is still ongoing. We've also done some really awesome things that weren't on here, such as the housing task force. We worked with a number of departments and boards to get the Tree City USA designation. We had a fortunate passing of a selectman and a special election. We're working through dispatch regionalization. And then, I think I appreciate John's suggestion. We'll send this out, and I already do have some ideas for goals and objectives, priorities that I would like to suggest next year. One of them is one thing I've done very poorly this year is kind of track everything I've done. And so one of the things I'd like to try to help that is I'd like to suggest that the board look to include some sort of quarterly report from me to force the issue of you know, as opposed to waiting once a year and doing this or doing our annual report, to provide a nice list of everything that's going on a quarterly basis from all of our departments. And then I would like to encourage those independent boards and committees to participate as well. I think that's really good for the community too. So they don't have to wait for the once a year annual report. They kind of have a smaller document that we can share, put, you know, some highlights on social media, and discuss it at a selectman meeting so people understand what's happening a little bit more in real time as well.
I would, and I'm thinking out loud, and you may not like this, I would even go so far as to say to have a special meeting with the other boards and committees, like once a quarter, just to go, because you're right. I mean, it takes a team, it takes a village to do all of this. And we should make sure that we are letting the citizens of Dover know everything that's going on. You know, from my perspective, I think you're absolutely right. So many things, good things happened, and you know, I think it's important that as part of our evaluation process of you, that we're reminded of those, and your evaluation process of your staff, that's included too. Because, you know, from my perspective, Chris blew it out of the park, improving communications and the website. And I know we didn't do everything that we set out to do, but we did a whole lot of other things that we didn't set out to do that are just phenomenal. You know, and clearly what we have found from those metrics that you shared with us is people do get information from social media. And that was something that was absolutely missing from our goals and objectives. So, you know, bravo to all of you. You know, there's just so many great things that happened during the year. And that's what, you know, goals and objectives, it's a good way to focus, but sometimes the goal that you set out isn't really what's paramount or most important. And I think, you know, for us, if you take a step back and just to use communication, the goal was to try and communicate better. And we focused on redesigning the website as a goal. But what we have successfully done is communicate better, but using other avenues. So definitely, you know, give ourselves some credit there.
Mike, I love your idea of going to quarterly because so many things, forgotten might not be the right word, but they get trumped or overridden or something even bigger comes along. So you speak about that one, but so much happens during a year in this town, and to get it down and captured on a quarterly basis, I think is a great idea. And
thank you. Yeah, I just find that you know, things are moving so fast. As soon as we complete one thing, we're on to the next. And you're right, they're certainly momentous, but we just push them to the side and on to the next thing.
Right.
And so I think it would be great to try to capture all that on a more regular basis.
And maybe we have a town administrator page, and maybe town administrator page is not the right title for it, but where you would put these quarterly updates so for people to go and see.
Absolutely, something like that. Absolutely.
Right.
Michael, well done. This is going to be really, really helpful. Cam, did you want to add something to this?
Well, perhaps in the spirit of improving communications between committees, I wanted to give you, the Board of Selectmen, the heads up that the Warrant Committee is looking into the possibility of trying to streamline the Blue Book process and considering moving it online. We know that that will raise perhaps tidal waves that will drown us all, but we thought it may be worthwhile giving it a shot. And as part of that, I thought it appropriate to talk with Nina on whether this is legally possible and make sure that there weren't any legalistic roadblocks that just made us stop before we started. And so I met with Nina last week, and she has informed me that there aren't any obstacles either from the state law or from from the bylaws to inhibit us from actually moving the Blue Book online. That doesn't mean that we're going to start doing it immediately. There's lots of processes we have to understand and how we can accomplish that. We also want to get feedback from the town and from various interested parties to be sure that we're actually doing the right thing here. We've already got feedback that a hard copy availability is somehow a requirement. But in any case, I just wanted to give you the heads up that we're contemplating this, and certainly would consider any feedback that the Board of Selectmen have on that. So thank you. That was all I wanted to say.
And so Cam, you should reach out to Kathy Weld, because, you know, the town report is a hybrid. Like, you can get it online and you can also get a hard copy. So it's probably not a bad idea to reach out to her about.
Right. That's what we were
feedback
thinking of, doing some sort of hybrid thing, so that people could get a hard copy if they wanted to. But it's a pretty arduous process, and to actually publish the Blue Book. And unfortunately, our guru on that, Peter Smith, has come to the end of his term this year. And so we have to think of, well, we could try and replicate what he does, but I think that's probably impossible. But we would be struggling to actually do that. And we think that perhaps it is a time to start considering moving this stuff online, where we can do more interesting reporting, and that we can provide information onto the website, for example, about, you know, where things stand with the town meeting and the warrants and all that stuff. So we're sort of ruminating about how we might approach this, but we certainly haven't got any fixed concepts of what we're going to do.
It's a good thing to look at.
Dovetails well with the tree committee, because we will be cutting down fewer trees by going digital.
Well, I thought
like
it also tied in with Mike's points about improving communications within the town.
Right.
So Cam, thank you very much. Michael, is there anything else that you'd like to add to this? Is that?
I think that's good for tonight. Yeah, thank you.
Terrific, thank you. We're going to move to item 8, and that's the Board of Selectmen's update, which I did jump to previously. But from my standpoint, the item that I just want to bring to everyone's attention that we have been working on since town meeting and since this came up is the Board of Fire Engineers, and the conversation with the members of the fire department is ongoing there. We have had lots of very substantive, positive conversations. The conversations are ongoing. What we want to reiterate is we are listening, we are reacting immediately. We have brought a specialist in to begin the process of interviewing members of the department. That process is underway. We have our town council working on this, and we just are reminding everyone, as certainly as we approach Memorial Day, we approach our town celebration, which is always such a special event with the members of our community who have served, from my son to many of your sons and daughters that will be present at the community in association with our police and our fire and our municipal employees. It's just a great way for the town to recognize everyone and to recognize the service, under the leadership of Carol Jackman. She does such a great job at this every year. So I want to remind people that that's coming up next week. And just in the final thought with the board and the members of the fire department is, we hear you, we're moving, and we're going to take this matter, we continue to take this matter very seriously. So,
well, you know, again, this is an employee matter. It's not really for public discussion. We have an investigator that's conducting an investigation, And, you know, we have to wait until the outcome of the investigation. And everybody, I believe, will be talking to her, but again, it's not in our purview.
So that is it for me. Robin, anything from an update standpoint for you?
No, nothing really.
Dave?
In the interest of time, I'll just say that the financial working group, we've been meeting, we're starting to make progress, and we've got some more work to do this in the next week or two. But we're making progress, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you. Thank you both. Our next item, just in terms of the last two items, are the schedule. Wednesday, June 5th. The graduation for Dover Sherburne is Thursday, June 6th, for those of you that will be in attendance. Always a highlight of the year for the towns of Dover and Sherburne. June 20th, July 11th, the 1st and the 15th. And Mike, any changes to this?
Nope, I think that's good. And you said it, I just wanted to bold it and underline it, because it's off schedule. Your next meeting is Wednesday, due to the graduation. So just
due to the graduation.
You said it, but I just wanted to make sure everyone knew, because it's a little off the norm.
So may I ask a favor? Could somebody send an email on
Tuesday?
On Tuesday or
To
Monday,
remind
and just say, hey guys, just a reminder, the meeting's on Wednesday.
We can do that.
Thank you. I would appreciate that.
John, what time's the graduation?
I have to be there at 5:30. It starts at 6, and it's just a great afternoon. So like just one of the best things that we get to do.
Hopefully it doesn't rain.
Hopefully it doesn't rain. If it rains, that might be an issue, because the rain date is Friday, and that could be problematic. But
Well, I think the last time they held graduation indoors was 2012, the year my son graduated. And it was hot in the gym.
hot.
That's all
It
I can say.
really, Megan graduated indoors. It was really hot. Yeah, and it does not fit everyone. So yeah, hope it's outdoors. Chris, would you or Mike, anything with regards to the administrator updates?
Just really briefly, I know it's late. We already congratulated Dave on his election, but I just wanted to thank Felicia, Darlene, and all the poll workers for a smooth day here. I'm in the building all day, so you can tell it's run very smoothly. People were in and out. Dave and I actually are going to be attending a tour with the Historical Society next Tuesday of the Carroll House, and is it the Sawin Museum?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that I'm looking forward to that. On Wednesday, the 29th, you're going to receive an invitation, perhaps later this week, tomorrow. The Historical Society is doing a dedication of a bench that's at right in front of the highway, or now I guess DPW garage, for Paul Tedesco. Paul did a lot to preserve the history of Dover, and that bench is there. But I guess they never did a kind of a formal ceremony, so they're going to do that. And then you already mentioned Thursday is the Memorial Day ceremony. I've already mentioned about working with Community Paradigm. The other thing I just wanted to mention, and as we get more information, I just thought this was very neat. Kevin McCabe, who I think has dropped off the call, he's been working with Minuteman Vocational High School. And it looks like we're going to have some students actually out as part of a class project to rebuild the DPW shed. Kevin calls it the pole barn. So that, basically the town will have to supply materials, but they will provide the labor as part of their school project. So I thought that was kind of a neat thing. And I'll keep the board updated as that moves.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Something for the newsletter. That's fun.
Yes.
I'm
Absolutely.
sure you're all over it, Chris. You can take pictures.
Writing a note right now.
Well done.
And then, John, I'll just mention it now because I know the consent agenda usually goes quick. had a discussion with Mr. Hadland, and we're requesting that as part of the consent agenda, we actually hold on the employment agreement with Carl as the acting finance director. We're going to work with Dave and maybe Kate on adding some additional priorities there as part of the transition period and things like that of looking at the department and the new position. So I think, Dave, you correct me if I'm wrong, but we'll hold on that and then come back with a slightly updated agreement.
Oh, great. For next week, or sorry, for next
For
meeting.
next meeting, yeah, if that works.
Wednesday.
Wednesday the 5th. But if you wanted to read all the other consent agendas, that would be fine.
No, that makes a ton of sense to do that because it is a transition year.
Right.
Yeah. So to the consent agenda items, approve Director of Public Works vehicle use per section 2.4 to 3 of the personnel rules and regulations, to approve Minuteman appropriation of excess and deficiency funds, approve employment agreement. I'm sorry, we're going to hold that. Approve reappointment of Mary Hornsby to the Personnel Board for a 1-year term. Thank you very much, Mary. Ending on June 30, 2025. And to approve special 1-day liquor licenses for May 31st, June 1st, 2nd, 6th, 7th, 3rd, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 3 on the 15th. I'm sorry, 3 on the 7th, 3 on the 15th, 1 on the 16th, 18th, 20th, 2 on the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 25th, 27th, 29th, and July 8th. It is definitely graduation season. Wow. Lots of graduation parties, weddings, all kinds of special events. And I move the consent agenda as presented and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor? I, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Dave Haviland.
Robin, did you get invited to any of those parties? There are 35 parties.
I may have. I have to check my social calendar.
Yeah. Yes, you should. And
I think one day we should do a town get a special license for the town and have a party.
where would we do that?
Maybe when we open the community center.
Could we do that?
That's
Mike,
worthy of a celebration.
would we have to have that at we would have to have it at the Legion or somewhere. We'd have to do, and we'd have to get a special license for the Legion. We would do it at special
Well, if you
license.
wanted to do it at the community
Yeah,
center.
special licenses for someplace without an existing liquor
Right.
license.
So you got to imagine that the community center is going to get a lot of these. The community center, the new community center is going to, that's going to be our #1 destination, probably.
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to work through that, and that's a really good question how we do that with our insurance provider. But we'll work through that.
Get Robin to rent it too. We'll rent it to Robin, and she'll do it.
All I know from experience, you need a bartender that has some kind of
License.
certification.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm pretty sure that takes us to our motion to adjourn.
I will second that.
Everyone have a great long.
I think we need to
weekend.
vote. All in favor?
Oh, all in favor. I, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
I don't know, guys. It's not that late. So, Dave Haviland.
I am starving.
Starving. Yes. Thank you all. Thank you very much for the 258 pages of.
Amazing. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great long weekend.
Yep.
Thank
Yeah,
you too.
enjoy everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.